this city, any given night, you can go Star Bar, 529, Earl, Graveyard even puts on shows, like Masquerade, Drunken Unicorn, Lenny's. Like your choices are for at least rock entertainment in this city are not limited. As soon as the show is booked and you know the lineup and you know how much it's going to be, you put all of that on a piece of paper, you know, and you run off like 200 of them and cover the fucking city with them. Yeah, you have to. It's still instilled in me. I grew up playing in punk bands my whole life, so to me, you make a flyer.
All this shit you see around us is from past shows that we tried to make, like, just be fun.
Yeah, we used to make a lot of flyers, a lot of handmade flyers, like with yarn and stuff, to try to make something that caught the eye.
Every pizza spot, every record shop, every, you know, tattoo parlor, every place where you would see anyone drinking, you would put up a flyer to get those people that are drinking to come see your band and drink at the other bar. There's a reason why people have done that for decades. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason why you make flyers and handbills. I mean, it's obviously something that works. It's still a name recognition thing. I think, like, as any artist, if you want to be popular, you have to be in people's mouths. You have to, you know, be in people's ears. The hip hop guys understand it, though. Hip hop guys understand shoving it down your throat. You know, like going and getting 10,000 handbills and tossing them all over the city. Going and getting big posters, and, you know, they'll staple a row of like 4 of the same poster, double side, all down a telephone pole off of an exit.
They really hustle that stuff. They really pump it.
Those motherfuckers work really, really hard. Way harder than we do.
When we first started out, we used to hit the streets, you know what I'm saying? We used to hit the streets with 30,000 CDs, pass them out ourselves, flyers and all that. I mean, it's all about guerrilla marketing. It's all about branding. If you try to brand something, you got to have some people can somebody can identify with the symbol. Anything you're doing in life is about branding. Any kind of business you're trying to do, and this is a business. You know what I'm saying? You got to brand, but people got to know that you stand behind your product and your product is good. Visuals and subliminal things can get into a person's mind faster than music. You know what I'm saying?
You know, I would travel through the schools and go to Clark and go to Georgia State and Emory and just set up and hustle my little mixtapes. I would remember setting tables up and, you know, people were like, who's DJ Drama? I'd be like, I don't really know the guy. I just come out here and work for him.
There's certain things we could definitely learn from the way I think the hip-hop world is, functions.
So I think, like, yeah, hip-hop kind of just motivated. If it didn't inspire the music of the rock bands, at least motivated the rock bands.
I do miss and reminisce about the days where, you know, like, one interesting story, and I'll throw out there, you know, now that I'm older and, you know, statute of limitations is over. We had an area here in town called Pershing Point, and it was right downtown here, West Peachtree and Peachtree met there, and it was a area where a bunch of mid-rise apartment buildings were with extremely cheap rent. So all the punk rock kids lived there. And we would have parties there on the weekends occasionally, and they'd be acid parties. So there'd be maybe 2,000 people all dropping acid and going out in the neighborhood. And it was just awesome because, you know, you'd be walking around smoking weed and drinking beer, having fun, whatever, and everybody was tripping. And you would just wander from one apartment to the next apartment and stay for a while, listen to music, you know, have sex, do whatever, go to another apartment. And we're talking, you know, the early 80s. This is like 82, 83, 84.
Acid was in the air, definitely around that time. Definitely did my fair share. Watched the Metroplex melt away at least once or twice. And then the Metroplex, you know, that was probably the best club I've ever seen shows in, bar none.
And that's where all my friends that were older and that were in bands always went to go see everybody play. That's where, like, The Clash, all kinds of bands came over and played that place.
If you were anybody of the 80s around that time, you came to the Metroplex. You know, this was a major stop-off for all bands.
It was pretty seminal for rock and roll at the time.
You know, it's like this just indestructible building. You couldn't fuck it up unless you kicked the toilet off the wall, which generally happened quite a bit.
Blondie, all these groups.
The owner was an ex-hippie, and he was really into the counterculture.
I did get to meet Bob Marley in 1977.
Started the punk rock club, and he would come to us, you know, because we were kids, and say, who do you want me to book? Because I don't know these bands. And we'd say, book the Circle Jerks, book Black Flag, book the Dead Kennedys, you know, JFA, Jodie Foster's Army.
He was into, like, marijuana activism, things like that, so he had his thing going, but, you know, I guess he wanted to do something for the kids.
I was driving up by the Varsity at North Avenue, coming off the interstate, and I was smoking a joint. This It was raining. There was this guy standing there. We'll work for food with a sign. I said, I bet he'd work for weed. I had all these extra tie-dye shirts, and I said, well, fuck, let's put "we'll work for weed" on them. Ta-da! Sold the shit out of them. Everybody loved it. Of course, Nixon started Operation Intercept in 1972. I got busted on the border of Texas with 90 pounds of pot. Real bummer. I did the Reagan Voodoo Doll in 1984. I started doing underground parties, you know, illegal bar, big warehouse parties. Well, everybody kept saying, Paul, why don't you open a club? Why don't you open a club? And so I opened a little warehouse party space that we didn't even have licenses for in 83, called the Metroplex.
Definitely was home once I found it. You know, I found people with my similar interests. You know, movies, music, you know, drinking.
The punks all hung out together as more of a family. It didn't really matter who was playing, you know, one band or another. It was more of, we're going to this place because that's where we know everybody's going to be.
We had a good punk scene going. It was black and white, very well integrated.
I mean, that place, yeah, just lent itself to being who you wanted to be, or reinventing yourself to who you wanted to be, basically, you know.
Many kids come to me and said, you know, Paul, you gave me a ride home in the middle of the night, saved my life, or I grew up there, I got laid there the first time, I got drunk there the first time.
It was 3 stories, actually. There's like, you would walk in, there's like the kind of like opening area, you go downstairs where the bands would play, but I don't know what it used to be, like a mattress factory or something like that. There was like a balcony that kind of surrounded the entire upstairs area, so you could get up there and still watch, you know, people dancing and the band from upstairs. And there was a basement to it where, you know, kids lived, things like that, kids that worked there, runaways, things like that, you know, kids with bad homes, you know.
And unfortunately, my girlfriend and the bartender of the club got lost at sea late '88, and I went to look for her, and during that time some homeless guys burned down the club. So it's like every good club should go that way.
Basically, this is the gravel parking lot I spent my youth. Unfortunately now, the place that was hated so bad, they toted out every fucking brick too, to make sure it never came back. Gone but not forgotten.
And so as the years went on, Atlanta has really become known as like the hub of hip-hop for the country. If you're a rap artist, you know that Atlanta is a happening scene for hip-hop and rap music. But at the same time, in the underbelly of Atlanta, it's like almost like a flip-flop. You have this still very much alive and vibrant rock and roll scene here in town, which encompasses, like I had mentioned earlier, you know, lots of metal, rockabilly and psychobilly, punk rock, straight-up rock, emo rock, you know, indie rock, which, you know, I still consider it all rock and roll, but it does definitely have its own crowds.
The scene is imaginary. It's, you know, it's a bunch of kids that go places together and do things together and listen to the same music and dress the same way and talk the same way and fuck the same way. And, I mean, what good is that? Ultimately, a scene is really, it's an obstacle for an artist. Because you're like, then you're saying, how am I going to fit here? How am I going to make this work? How am I going to be a part of the scene? How am I going to get accepted in the community here? And really, the only way to get accepted is to just not give a shit. To do whatever you want to do. To make the art you want to make, the music you want to make, fuck how you want to fuck, and dress how you want to dress. Like, to me, that's what makes a music scene. It's the individual. It's not the group. It's not an effort. It's not rock versus hip hop versus country versus whatever. It's how many individuals are there and how many people can appreciate individuality enough to support it, you know. And I think Atlanta has the potential for that. There's a lot of really unique individuals here.